so.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the February meeting of the Portsmouth Conservation Commission. The first thing on the agenda, actually, this is kind of one of the last things, but I wanted to welcome a new member, Talia. Thank you. You're an alternate, right? You're coming in as an alternate.
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. Welcome. And I think because we are all here, which is amazing, we don't need any alternates voting unless we have a member recuse themselves for a application, then we'll have someone of one of the alternates vote. First order of business is the approval of minutes. Does anyone have any things they saw that need to be changed from the January minutes? Would someone like to make a motion to approve those?
I will make a motion that we approve the minutes from the January meeting.
I'll second. Second that.
Okay. All in favor? Okay. Thank you very much. Moving forward, actually, before we get to our first conditional use permit application, we do have two postponements. The dredge and fill minor impact for 333 Borthwick Avenue requested postpone. And due to how late the work session was potentially going to be tonight, the Little Harbor School requested to postpone. So could someone please make a motion to postpone those to the March meeting? Each one separately, please.
I'll make a motion to postpone the State Wetland Bureau application, dredge and fill for 33 Borthwick Avenue to
333.
the next meeting.
Yep.
333.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Okay. And how about for the Little Harbor School?
I will make a motion to postpone the work session for the Little Harbor School till the March meeting for 50 Clough Drive. I think is that the address?
Yeah. I will second that.
Second. All in favor? Okay. All right, now moving on to our old business, wetland conditional use permit applications. The first one on the docket is 90 FW Hartford Drive. Do we have someone to speak to that application?
Astrid Gray, 90 FW Hartford Drive.
Thank you.
So based on my last time I was there, I took the letter from December and had the wetland scientist basically redo the whole plan for recommendation. So he basically that was his plan in terms of the location and the species. Basically 21 removed, 21 put back. I think on the 21 there was 4 of them that I think he said per his assessment were dead, but we put 21 just to put it back, all of them in that area. The species, he said he went with these because one of them that was there is prone to some disease. So what was there basically there were blueberry bushes, there were maples and pines, white pines. So this whole area basically just put back. And he also mentioned basically like a monitored for 2 years. So every year I'll just come here and just give you a status report on how this is doing. And then any remedial based on if something is not successful. So for 2 years basically.
Okay.
Yeah. And when this is going to be done, the scientist and his team would be there, so to supervise it and notate anything that has to report back to the Conservation Commission. So the yearly one, and then once this is done, just to give a status on how that went and any questions. So basically 21, I think, removed, 21 put back in the same area. And he also listed the size of them in the table too, basically at a minimum, what they should be. So yeah. So basically these, and then the reporting for 2 years.
Okay. are you okay to take questions? Is that the end
Sure,
of
yeah,
your
yeah,
presentation?
yep,
Okay.
yep.
Do the commissioners have any questions? Whatever would like to start?
Just like a couple questions to just clarify a little bit. So obviously there's like the T1 and the T2 site where there was some cutting. What's going on with T1?
T1, so it's basically with me and my neighbor, so that I'll have to coordinate with him. So T1, we put it like out of scope for this. The T2 is basically the pressing one where the wetlands, the T1 being like away. But I'll have to coordinate with him to do the T1 at some point. But most of my expenses would be on the T2. So once we get to the T1, then we'll have to come back here and get a CUP for the T1 as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's where the trees were, it's 90 and 80 FW. So I'll have to coordinate with him.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I guess, and this is again just like for clarification, for the T2 site, right, there's a pretty big area in which there was cutting of trees, but you're only proposing doing some planting in the buffer, but not in the wetland proper. And was that like what was recommended to you by?
So letter 1C mentioned, revegetation of 25-foot buffer. The other piece, I'm just going to leave it as is. I mean, there's still some vegetation there.
So the wetland proper area, you're just going to kind of let go wild, but you're not doing any planting in?
Correct. So the 1C on the letter said, restoration of the 25-foot buffer. And that's what, when I sent this letter to Mark, he said, he went by what was written in the letter. So he said the other one, was not in scope. So he just went by what the letter said. I think the letter in December.
Okay, so it wasn't necessarily his recommendation, but the way he was inferring what the city was asking for.
Correct. So he said per the letter, it's a restoration of the 25-foot buffer. So that's why you see the planting there. He only put the 25. He said the 25 to 50, I could still put some trees there, which I will. Anyway, but he said he just put the one in scope from the letter in December. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And then the other question I had is just that dotted line
Yes.
around.
Oh, so
The curved dotted
around.
line?
Yes, so
What-
that's where the lawn is. So he suggested that a piece of the lawn I not mow, so he marked it. And basically what I'm going to do is not to mow it, I'm just going to put some borders around it, just edge it, like them rocks. So this way I don't mow that area, what you're looking at here.
Okay, so you are going to kind of honor that and put
Yes.
put some barriers for
Correct.
yourself to
Yeah.
remind you not
Yeah.
to mow there.
I'll put some like boulders there. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's going to be part of the restoration as well, and the status
Okay.
yearly. Yeah.
So you have shown here the 21 trees were removed, but what you are putting are 21 plants, not necessarily 21 trees, correct?
The shrubs.
So partially trees, partially shrubs to
Correct.
come up with that 21.
Correct.
And then there was also the 7 in the 25 to 50 foot buffer.
Right.
Is that the T2 area, or was that still kind of within this T1 area?
No, that's the T2 area.
So the 7 total they're saying removed is from that area.
From-
You're saying in between your neighbors.
No. So
Okay.
the T1 is different. So what you're looking at is just the T2 area.
Mm-hmm.
So the other 7 that you see is 25 to 50 buffer.
So that those aren't being replaced.
Correct. Yeah,
According
because
to your restoration plan
because
right
he went by what the letter said. One restoration of the 25-foot buffer. I think it was 1C. So that's what he went by. So
now. Okay.
yeah, I think there was 7 over there as well. So.
Gotcha. And the letter you're referring to, I'm sorry, can you clarify what that?
Yes, it was sent to me December 21st, and it specified here 1C. It was sent from the Conservation Commission. It says plans for revegetation and restoration of the 25-foot vegetated buffer with native plantings and proposed management of this zone. So that's 1C on that letter.
Okay.
So.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other questions, Barbara? Did you have something?
Yeah, I guess I still don't understand why the 7 aren't being accounted for.
Because he went by what the letter said. So the 25-foot, because it says restoration of the 25-foot, so he only went for the 25-foot.
And the other 7 came out of the 25 to 50?
Correct, yes. Yep.
And you're planting 1 tree in the wetland? Is that what you're doing? It looks, you were going to plant a maple in the wetland?
In which area? The 25, 0 to 25, or?
Yeah. Or 0 to 25, I guess. No.
Yeah, the 0 to 25, what, the M, basically MPB, what is going to be put there. So,
Yeah, there's one M in the
Yeah, there's an M in the,
wetland.
In the
teaching
wetland.
area.
yeah.
yes, because this one was fully in.
This one was,
It
excuse
was
me.
fully in the wetland, so that was one of the big one. So yes, so what you see here is exactly what the plan is. Is,
Okay.
so the M is like wetlands itself.
So my other question is, are we accounting for the original ones, the older stumps at all?
I'm going to leave them as is. When you say older stump,
There were older stumps there that.
yes, that's everything. So whatever he marked, that's why in his letter he put like 4 of them that were there, but that were dead already and removed way before. But I added it to the 21.
You added it into
Oh
the
yes,
21?
yeah. So I think it's if you look at it in the table 1, it says there's like 3 asterisks that says represent dead trees, and they were and removed. But I'm accounting it in the 21 as well.
If you add all those up, though, that's more than 21 individually. I think it's 24.
Oh, so maybe he didn't account for the dead one. Okay.
And then same thing with the 25-foot buffer. There's 1 with an asterisk,
Yep.
so that would be 8 total in the 25 to 50-foot buffer, just for the total, if we're
Right.
accounting for the ones with the asterisk.
Okay. So it looks like then he didn't count the one that he put an asterisk on. That he said dead trees. Yeah. This is what like leaning and everything. So yes, I guess 21 doesn't include. No, it doesn't include the dead ones.
And this table also isn't showing the one that was removed in the wetland either. This is just showing the 2 ones in the buffer, or the 2 buffer zones.
0 to 25, yes.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
And that was a maple that was removed in the, okay,
Yep.
wetland?
It's a red maple.
Any other questions?
I have one more question, and again, this isn't not necessarily a recommendation. I'm just curious if this is something you're open to. But those 21 plants that you're putting into the the 0 to 25 space, would you be open to spreading those out so that they extend into the 25 to 50-foot space as demarcated on that image?
Ideally, you would want them a little bit spread out, just to, a little bit more space for them. Yeah, I'm open to it.
Okay. Well, I'll confer with these guys to see
Yep.
what would be recommended. But
Yeah, because that's pretty clustered. So, yeah, ideally, you would want to space them out a little bit more.
Great. Okay.
Barbara, you can go first.
Okay. It was a little confusing when we look at that, because it's not delineated, so we know where the 100-foot buffer is all the way around. Is there a reason?
Yeah, there should be another diagram, right? If you scroll up, there should be one right there. See the 100-foot line?
No.
So there's a green line, right?
That's from the original city delineation, though, not from the delineation that Mark did.
So from the 25, I know it. I mean, if I take 25 and I add, it probably comes in the, where the T1 is area. So I would say, 25, 50, and, because he did 0.25, 25, 50, so if I double that, it goes pretty much on this side.
Right, it would be nice to see it going all the way around the portion of the wetland that was delineated so that it can, for you also going forward in the future, for you doing any work on your property, to know exactly where that 100-foot buffer line is now according to your new delineated wetland, as well as the 50-foot and the 25-foot buffer, so that you know where you are and are not able to do work without coming before us.
Right,
But also in terms of how does it impact, like where does your shed fall and where does T1 kind of fall in relation to those lines, which it's hard to tell exactly from this
yes, I think he measured it.
schematic.
I think it was past the 60-foot mark on the.
What was that?
I think the shed was actually closer to the property line on that side. Mm-hmm. But so if you take zero, I think it was like 65-ish, so 70 feet, because it's closer. So the shed basically is on the property line with me and my neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
The little plastic shed there.
But like where is it with regards to the edge of the wetland, like, is more of the question.
Right.
And same thing with T1, which I'm assuming T1 is probably outside that 100-foot buffer according to your new delineation, but
Correct.
it's hard,
Yep.
it's hard unless we have an actual like GPS measurement of where that is and then, see the lines to
Right.
be total, and same thing with the shed, to be totally clear on where
Right.
it is field located with regards to the wetland delineation.
Right.
So that would be, we'll talk about this in discussion, but just so you know, that would probably something we'll talk about in terms of getting a nice up-to-date map to go forward for yourself, but also to go forward to planning board.
So you would need.
Just the 25-foot, the 50-foot, and the 100-foot buffer lines based on your new wetland delineation from Mark, shown on the map, also shown with the field location of the shed and the, assuming the T1 area is correct, just having that on there, but making sure that that is accurate on the map as well.
Okay. Now, because I don't plan on doing anything in that area because, it is buffer anyway now that I know.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't plan on doing it, apart from the restoration, I'm not doing anything there now, so, because
But
now
I
I
think
know.
it's also partially for going to planning board.
Planning board, okay.
Yeah, so that they can see exactly, where everything is. We've been talking about this now for quite a few meetings.
Yes.
But they have not seen it at all. And so
Right.
having it on the map, when it goes to them, will make it very cut and dry for them in terms of, what we've been talking about, what you're planning on doing, and any future, work to be done in the area. Planned or not planned, just so you're aware going forward.
Now with that, do I have to come back with that, or?
We're gonna go, well, someone will probably make a motion here. We'll go into discussion, we'll talk about that. So I don't want to say anything yes or no, but you've definitely presented us with a lot more than in the past meetings, so we're grateful for that, and we will definitely take that under consideration and kind of see where we go from there.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah, Jess?
Do you have a time frame when you might do this work, assuming things move
Ideally,
forward?
like midsummer-ish, when it's like warmer, easier, because there will be small shrubs, so, warm is better than cold. So I would say midsummer, August, September-ish area, time frame. Yeah.
I think the staff report, did you read the staff report about your project and the rest of the projects on the docket? Because I think they suggested June 30th as the completion of work. Is that
I did see,
We did recommend a date for all restoration work to be done by, just so you can start the monitoring and planting, so we'll have a few months to get that done.
that could it be like, maybe, like I said, maybe August-ish? That would be easier.
I think the thought is a little earlier in the season to give things time to establish and kind of settle and start
Okay.
to see how they're doing. So maybe more June timeframe
Yeah.
than August.
And I think by the
June-
time
yeah.
you get through planning board, the planting season will have started, and, late spring is going to be really the time that you want to plant anyways, so.
Okay.
Gives
Late
everything
spring.
the best chance
Okay.
of survival,
That's,
so you're not replanting more than you have to.
yeah, that's fair. Yep, June, yep, good.
Yeah. Any other questions? Are we ready for a motion?
I just had one question on what you had presented in the narrative was not specific on who would be checking on the plantings over the future. I know that you're going to have them monitored. Would
Yes.
it be Mark or a wetland scientist?
So in conjunction with Mark, basically, the yearly piece would consist of him basically doing a status report and me bringing it to you guys and say that's how it's doing. So yes, with the wetland scientist. Yep.
You have something, Kate?
I'll just have a quick comment. What Lynn brought up earlier made me start thinking about it. I kind of see where you might have gotten confused maybe in the last meeting about the 25-foot buffer, and we had a condition on the letter of decision for postponement that that buffer area be revegetated, because that's the vegetated buffer where we don't allow cutting. So I think maybe in our discussion last month, we meant in spirit of that 25-foot buffer that it should be revegetated naturally and allowed to be vegetated and not mowed. But that might have confused you in where we wanted you to put new trees and plantings that restore the number that were taken out. So we might not have expressed clearly that we didn't want them just in that 25-foot buffer, which is why you might have gotten confused and put them all in that strip right there. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
But I think, like you mentioned, right, so if you have a discussion that I could space them out.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
so
open to
within the
that.
buffer would be great, but
Yeah.
yeah, we didn't mean to
No.
ask you to put them just there, just
Yeah,
because that
I
is a
mean,
bit
if
crowded.
I need to space them out, I will. So,
Great.
Yep.
Correct.
Would someone like to make a motion for discussion? For discussion? Oh, we haven't even, we got
Do you need to make a motion to discuss?
it. Right? Now you're
Yes.
making me confused.
Yes. Should I add stipulations that I've heard people express?
If you'd like to, sure.
So I will make a motion that we recommend approval for 90 FW Hartford Drive with the following stipulations. When they go before planning board, they have a clearly delineated, up-to-date map of the wetland and the buffer area for the property. That they can spread out their planting plan into the 25 to 50-foot buffer as well, and not keep it solely consolidated to the 0 to 25-foot buffer. That they plan for a earlier, maybe May to June planting season, so that monitoring can begin this planting season, and that a wetland scientist is the one who is doing the monitoring of the success of the plantings.
Does anyone have anything else to
Yeah.
add to that before we get a second? Yeah, Barbara?
Yeah, I can either do that or second it. I was just going to say for the delineation, maybe to be explicit with, to know where the 25, the 50, and the 100-foot buffer line are. Just to add that to your buffer area, if that's okay.
Yes, that was the intention if I didn't say it clearly.
Yeah. And then the other one is to put barriers in the no mow, to delineate the no mow
Oh,
area,
yes.
you think? Would that be okay?
Yep.
And then this will be discussion, but, so should I add it to the motion, or, is to add is it 7 trees? 8 trees, right?
It's 8, in the 25 to 50, it's 8 trees.
Yeah, just to, I don't know if that was in there or not, but.
No,
so.
that wasn't.
Are those all good with the first person, the first motion?
Are you good with those stipulations?
Yes.
Can I just ask, Jess, what was your last motion? or last stipulation?
That the monitoring is done by a wetland scientist.
Did you want to follow anything in the staff report about the 80% survival rate and having it for the first 2 growing seasons?
Oh, yep. Yep, sure, yes.
Just as is, or?
Yeah,
Just
I
to
thought that's
make it
sort of
pretty clear.
standard protocol, right,
Okay,
at this
yeah.
point,
It's
so.
probably just
Yeah, yes.
healthy practice for us to say it
Yes.
out loud so that we
Yes,
don't get confused.
and that, yeah, they demonstrate at least 80% survival rate after 2 years, the first 2 years of monitoring. If not, then there's replanting.
Perfect.
And the boundary markers.
The boundary markers,
Boundary
yeah.
markers, is that what you were saying? Okay.
Boundary markers, yeah.
Do we have a second for discussion?
Oh, that was that's my
Oh, that was
second.
your second, sorry, Barbara.
Sort
Yeah,
of
sorry.
not
Yes,
officially,
adding
but
then second.
Yeah, that would be my second,
Okay.
and I approve all of the stipulations on my second.
Do we want to, just for the applicant's sake, read out all of them now in order if we have it? I can help.
Do we want to talk about some of them first?
Oh, yeah, sorry,
And
of
then,
course.
and then maybe, because specifically maybe the adding of the 8 trees. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, it seemed like the applicant was okay with that, and it fits in really nicely with what Lynn was saying about trying to go into the 25 to 50. And the 8 trees were cut, and I don't see a reason why not to be putting those in there. I'm not totally comfortable with the blueberry bushes, but if the 8 trees are added, I think that would be a nice compensation to kind of spread those out over in the 25 to 50. So I don't know. Anything else? Anybody else?
Yeah, I agree with spreading out what you have, those species that you have, plus adding 8 additional trees and spreading all that together out into from the 0 to the 50-foot buffer. So kind of doubling the area that you are putting everything into.
So would that be 21 plus 8?
21 plus 8, yep. I guess it's 24 plus 8? 24 plus 8. Because your original 21 didn't have those 3
Well, but those were,
asterisk ones.
but those were considered already dead or removed before.
What was that?
Those were considered like dead, right? I mean, what's his asterisk there? So they were already, it says, represent dead trees and were removed long before. Yeah. So there were some of them there, so.
I mean,
But see, I have a confusion because you said when we discussed, you said if I could spread that into the 25, but now you're saying you want additional.
yeah, so first of all, we're in closed discussion.
Okay.
So let us
Sure.
discuss first, and then we will come back to you if we have questions, and we will make sure everything is clear as day, so we know how to go forward. To me, the ones that are dead should still count, because dead trees in a wetland and a buffer still have value. I don't know how everyone else feels about that, in terms of the
I
count.
think the kind of thought is, were those removed much prior to this activity, in that maybe the previous owner was the one that removed those trees, and then therefore should it be on the current owner to restore that issue, right? And that's kind of the question. I'm not sure exactly what these trees are going to cost and what, 4 or 8 additional trees or whatever might, present in terms of the kind of some sort of hardship to the current owner, but that'd be kind of the concern or question is like, whose responsibility is it? And I don't know that we have information from the wetland scientist to say that. That being said, if it's, okay with the applicant, I mean, certainly I would say add in some number of those back would be kind of a good gesture to kind of really try and resolve the issue, so.
No, I hear you, and I agree with the value of those stumps, just for the ecosystem and for the trees around them. But as we were saying, we don't know, we don't have the information as to who or when they were removed. So
Yeah.
I think it makes sense to add those 7 to come up to the number
And
of
keep the
trees.
original 21
Yeah, plus
species, though, because it's
Yes.
species, not trees, that he planted, or is planning on planting, if everyone's okay with that. Okay.
Yeah,
And then add an additional 7 trees that were taken out of the 25 to 50-foot buffer. Okay.
yes.
Yeah, that's the problem with not, with it after the fact.
Right.
And we shouldn't be hearing this after the fact, so, but I agree.
So just to be clear, I mean, that takes the total from 21, which is currently proposed, to add the 7, so it'd be a total of 28
Right, but we'd like those 7 to be trees.
trees, yes, as similar to the,
Yeah, and that total of 28 species, 7 of which, the additional 7 are trees, plus all the trees that he already put out there, would be spread out between the 0 and the 50-foot buffer. Right?
yeah.
I mean, and frankly, I think it could be like anywhere in that 50-foot buffer of the designated, or, delineated wetland.
Right.
And including that kind of no-mow zone, I mean, why not?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
part of the,
okay.
yeah, so anywhere in, because that's what's hard, is the 25-foot line and the 50-foot line, he's only showing on part of the wetland,
Yeah.
but it goes all the way, around the wetland, so anywhere in that 0 to 50 foot, I think. I mean, really 0 to 100 is fine too, but if we want them closer.
And it'll also help reinforce the kind of the no-mow zone too. The other question I had though was about the shed. Are we dealing with that at all, or is that?
So I think that's partly what the delineation, why the delineation lines need to be on there. And I don't know, do you know, like, with regards to a building permit, I mean, that's not us, but I don't know if it does end up falling within our 100-foot buffer line, which I don't know if it will, and we'll have to, that's kind of what the map is for. Then you would have to come back for an additional CUP?
Additional wetland CUP and a building permit, right? Yeah, when we looked, we couldn't find a building permit for the shed, so it may not be in our files, but if it was found to be within a 100-foot buffer, then it would have to come back to us.
So should we add that as a stipulation? If it's found to be within the 100-foot buffer, to come back with a
I think that's reasonable.
CUP? Just put it in there, okay, so,
I will say, we do have someone on Zoom, I'm not sure if they want to talk, but
oh,
it might be worth asking, I don't know when public comment comes up, but after we finish discussion, maybe.
sure, okay, so
They might not want to, so.
shed is found to be within 100-foot buffer line to return with I guess it's another after the fact CUP?
Correct.
Wetland CUP? Okay. And the building permit has nothing to do with us, but likely that would,
Right.
because
not
that
sure
doesn't
if we-
matter where it falls?
I'm not sure if we should probably be the ones making that stipulation to get a building permit.
Yeah,
But
I don't-
that can just fall within the staff department.
Okay.
Inspections department.
Okay. All right, then do we want to restate the stipulations?
Might be helpful.
You want me to do I have?
It's a long one.
Okay. So the first one I have is before going to the planning board, that the 25-foot, 50-foot, and 100-foot buffer lines are shown on the map, including and also where the shed location is. To add an additional 7 trees to your 21 species that you already have, and you can spread those anywhere between the 0 and 50-foot buffer. To do planting May, June-ish time to try to give the plants the best success at survival during that first growing season. To have a wetland scientist do the monitoring report. And I think you had also said that they would be overseeing the initial planting, which would be great. and to have that survival rate need to be 80% throughout 2 growing seasons. Otherwise, whatever remediation work needs to be done to replant will happen. A barrier to delineate where the no-mow line will be. Wetland boundary marker or wetland buffer marker placards will be installed at, I don't know, what have we been doing, like 50, every 50 feet or something?
I think that's what we started saying, along the 25-foot vegetative buffer.
Along the 25-foot vegetative buffer. And then the last one I have is if the shed is to be found within the 100-foot buffer, to return for an after the fact wetland conditional use permit.
Did you get the barriers on the no-mow?
I did.
Great.
Did I miss anything?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are we only referencing the wetland on like the main one where all the trees were cut down, or is the buffer, the 100-foot buffer, does it need to be delineated around T1 too, or is it just T?
I think what I was thinking is the wetland that has been delineated by Mark, that I think on our plan it was like an orangey color. To show the 25, 50, and 100-foot buffer lines from that new delineated wetland on his property only, right? I mean, we can't really say to carry it onto other people's property.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if you're asking about that, it's, I think it's too small to fall under our buffer regulations, so, so it's more what he does in the wetland on that situation. But,
And T1 is an area where there were trees that were cut. It's not a wetland in this map.
Right.
and was in the buffer originally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you look at this plan, it's a little kind of confusing because we still have the Portsmouth delineation that was
Right.
done, right? And that's the kind of shaded green area to the left of the plan. And then based on that, you have a 100-foot buffer line that is close to the house area. That 100-foot buffer line will obviously move to more encompass 100 feet around the yellowish wetland that was delineated. So, you know, just on the kind of southern part of the property, if you will, it'll move towards the house a little bit, but on the northern side, it'll move away from the home. So like, part of that T1 may no longer actually be in the 100-foot buffer, which is why it would be helpful to see where that exactly falls.
Good question.
Was there also something in the staff report about the stumps being removed in T1 if that was to happen?
And it didn't.
But if it did, they would have to come back? Did I see something about that in the staff
Right.
report?
Yeah, there's,
Yeah, that is
Something
in
about
staff
that.
report. So generally, anytime there's stump removal going on within a wetland buffer, that's going to require a wetland CUP because it's ground disturbance. So I know we didn't quite touch on what was happening here with the stumps, but if they are to be removed, that would be more surface area calculations that would need to be done. A wetland CUP would have to be submitted, and there would have to be different types of restoration, or at least mitigation done for any stump removal.
So should we add that as a additional stipulation if stumps are removed within the 100-foot buffer? Again, another after the fact,
During the restoration.
or I guess maybe it wouldn't be after the fact because they haven't been removed yet, but so prior to removal?
Right.
Okay.
Prior to removal of any stumps. A wetland CUP must be sought.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Anything else people have thought of? Are we ready for a motion? I mean, oh yeah, do you want to see if the person on Zoom wants to talk?
I mean, is it too late? Did we miss a public?
No, they can talk.
Okay, I will ask. Hi, George. I see you're on Zoom. Would you like to speak at all? I see you're unmuted, but we can't quite hear you. Maybe not. Okay.
It says he's talking, but it's not.
Yeah, it does say he unmuted, but maybe that might have been accidental.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. Yes.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, my name is George Burke. I live at 15 FW Hartford Drive in the Woodlands, and I served on the planning board, the HOA board from 2013 to 2021. I couldn't make this meeting or the prior one, but I had submitted some stuff for public comment at the last meeting. I know other board members had spoken to Mr. Chicory in 2017 when he applied to take down a tree, and then I had personally inspected his property in 2020 when he was looking to cut down 11 trees on the left-hand side. I told him at that time that his entire backyard appeared to be in the buffer, and I told him he needed to talk to Peter Britz prior to cutting any of those trees. The HOA's approval of him cutting those 11 trees was contingent upon him getting the town's approval. I'm wondering if that had happened and if he's going to be held accountable for those trees as well.
Good question.
I don't know if those 11 trees you're referring to are part of the total of 28 trees, 27 trees, 28 trees? 28
Yeah,
trees that
28.
we're taking into account in this after-the-fact application.
Yeah, these were cut in 2020, and for the prior meeting, I'd submitted his application that outlined where they were. They're kind of opposite of, I guess I can't see right now, but they're the other side of the yard from where the cutting was between him and his neighbors.
Yeah, so what we've been talking about during this application, it looks like those trees you might be referring to might be falling in the was it T1?
One, yeah.
The T1 section, which is not part of this application. If it's found that that area is within the, what does it have to be, 50 feet from the, 25 feet from the wetland?
25 feet, yep.
From the new wetland delineation, then he would need to come back for an after-the-fact CUP on those. It doesn't look like, though, with his new delineation, that area will fall within the 25-foot buffer. However, if he wants to remove any of those stumps from that area that you're referring to, he will have to come back for a wetland conditional use permit application for the stump removal.
I should just note, public comment, it's not meant to be
yeah, back and
interactive
forth.
or back and forth, but we really appreciate what you had to say, George, and thank you for signing on. But let us know if you have anything else to comment on.
Yeah, I'll just to clarify, the ones I'm talking about were cut in 2020, and they're between his house and the house to the left, so it's 100 FW. So they're not in any of the areas that are covered in, I guess, the current plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, George.
All right, thank you.
So those might not be on our radar, but this is what we have to go on, so I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the ones that Mark delineated, that he identified as being older,
If those are the ones he's referring to.
yeah, from 2020, or they could be from 2017 even. But
I
we tried to,
think we can only go based on what we have in front of us,
and I think we tried to include older ones
right?
with the understanding that they were.
And I think the restoration plan, that Mr. Chicory has put forward with our stipulations, I think I feel like it's adequate.
Yeah, and I felt like pointing out that the trees, adding those 7 trees or whatever was sort of part of what we had seen was submitted for public comment before, in my mind, that it justified adding the older trees that we know were cut before. So,
Right.
I don't know how everybody else feels, but.
Are we good with what we have, our stipulations going forward with this?
Yeah.
Everyone feels okay with that? Okay, are we ready for a vote? Okay, all in favor? Okay. I think we are good. So you will get a letter of decision with, it's been approved, so you'll be moving on to the planning board, and you'll get a letter of decision with all those stipulations that we stated.
Okay.
And before the planning board, however, to get that map up to date with those lines and the shed, so that they can see what they're looking at, and that any work going forward with the stumps will require a CUP to come back for that.
Right.
And then any, work done in the future, if you decide to do other things within that 100-foot buffer, you now know to come
Definitely.
back.
I just got a question though. So if I wanted the shed, it's like a Rubbermaid that was there when I bought the house. So if I wanted to remove it, then it would be out of scope because it's like falling apart anyway. So, yeah,
I don't know if he was to remove it.
Is it,
it's
is
on a
it-
platform. So.
is there any foundation for it? Is there
No.
anything underground?
No.
So it would just simply be taking it up?
It just sits on like a wooden platform.
I don't see how there would be ground disturbance, so I think
Right.
that would be all right without a wetland CUP, but any new shed going in would
Right.
need it,
If I wanted
regardless
to
of
put
if it's foundation or.
exactly, if I want to
sitting
put
on
something big with a crushed stone, which
Right.
I'm not going to do, but yeah, this one sits just on a wooden platform that was there when I bought the house, and the shed was on there. So yeah, there's no ground disturbance. It just sits on top of a platform. So
I would still put it on your map before
yes.
going to the planning
Yep.
board,
Yep.
and then you can tell them you plan on removing it.
right,
But I would still have it on the
Okay.
on the map,
that's good.
on the plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
So,
Right. Next. It's not working.
24.
Yes, the next application is for 224 Broad Street. Is anyone here to speak to that? I am going to recuse myself for this application.
And so we need a alternate to,
Is anyone here to speak to it?
I don't think anyone's here. I don't see
oh,
the Quokkas.
Okay.
Thanks, Peter.
that would be a quick meeting.
Do they need to be here in order for it to get approved?
That's a good question.
I've talked to them twice now, so
Yeah, and I mean, this is pretty straightforward.
love it if we.
That's a Peter question.
Can we move on with, can we vote on it? Okay.
I can't.
If Barbara's not here at the end, and I'm recusing myself
We'll have to
for
appoint.
this one, so someone else will have to be chair.
So if neither chair or vice chair here should vote for who's going to be chair in their absence. So you just have to take a vote for a chair.
Right now?
Well,
When it comes to-
before you both go.
Okay. All right.
I'll make a motion to postpone it till the end of the agenda.
Okay.
I'll second that.
But you're the chair. Are you making a motion to, you're the chair for this application?
Okay, I'll stop making motions.
I think someone else needs to make a motion.
I'll make a
Postpone?
motion to postpone 224 Broad Street until the end of the agenda today.
Second.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll be the chair.
You're the
Sorry.
chair. I'm forgetting. I know,
chair.
it's confusing because I haven't moved, because I'm just going to come right back again.
Yes, so first and second in discussion, all those in favor? Thank you.
Okay, all right, moving on to 300 Gosling Road. Is there anyone here to speak to that? Come on up.
I've been doing this for about 8 years, and I haven't seen that happen before. So you guys handled it well. So to introduce myself, I'm Connor Madison. I'm here from GZA. We're the environmental consultants for Eversource on this project. Kurt Nelson should be on the phone in theory. Nice, perfect. He just felt ill, so he didn't want to show up and infect everybody. So he is the Eversource applicant on this project, and he's free to chime in whenever. So we are here tonight for kind of two things. One requires a motion and a quorum, and the other is a standard dredge and fill permit kind of info session. So I'm here to present a standard dredge and fill wetlands application that you'll be seeing in about 2 weeks. But because it'll fall kind of in between the meetings, I wanted to present the information tonight, as well as a conditional use permit for the same project with the same plans. So that one will require a motion. This project is a little bit more complicated than the past Eversource projects you have seen. My understanding is that you have seen a lot in the last couple of years. This is a resistant substation retirement project is the title of this project. So do I have a clicker, or is it all up to you, Kate?
It might be
should
up
be
to
one
me,
there.
but yeah, there is a little pen
Oh,
there.
this one?
But not to advance slides,
Yeah, it might
right?
just be for, honestly, I can advance too.
Yeah, I only have like 6, so it won't be that hard.
Okay.
So just a quick agenda. I only have a couple slides here just to help. We'll go over project need, the project overview, because the standard dredge and fill does include the town of Greenland work. Majority of the project is in the city of Portsmouth. We'll go over the standard dredge and fill. A majority of that is the minimization of wetland impact and how we avoid it. And then we'll just go through our best management practices. That includes the construction best management practices, as well as Fish and Game and Natural Heritage Bureau that we have coordinated with. So I believe we can go into the next slide. So to take a step back, there are kind of, in my mind, 2 portions of this project. Everything is connected. However, there is a northern portion that I refer to kind of as the Schiller area. I believe that is the site that you walk to off of Gosling Road. And then there's the south portion, and that is a right-of-way that is right next to 95 and then follows the off-ramp of exit 3. This project need is a retirement of a distribution substation in that Schiller area. Related to that, we will also be proposing to replace existing wood structures with steel structures, as well as remove a transmission line. These wood structures, as I'm sure you know, have experienced pole splitting, rot. With pole splitting, it involves insects that can go in, water can get in and damage it. We are proposing to install steel structures as a replacement for these wood structures. I believe the next slide goes over more of a project overview as well. So for the standard dredge and fill and this conditional use permit, the northern part of this project by Schiller is the removal of the T13 transmission line. Where that T13 transmission line is currently, we will be installing a new distribution line, so that'll decrease the height as well as the overall impact of that area. The south portion, currently in the right-of-way, if you've ever driven north on 95, in the right-of-way there's 2 distribution lines that are right next to each other. We're proposing, related to this project, to combine those 2 circuits or lines and put them on one structure through the middle of the right-of-way. So we'll be consolidating it from, basically think of it 2 structures to 2 circuits right down the middle to 1 circuit. The standard dredge and fill also goes into all of the temporary wetland impacts as well as permanent and total. So we just put in this little table to go over the standard dredge and fill process. This project has been going for quite some time. So we met with all of the agencies, Army Corps, EPA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Fish and Game, Natural Heritage Bureau, Mitigation, all of the agencies to discuss how to permit this project correctly. That was early December. I believe it was December 5th. And we decided to dredge and fill mainly due to the temporary wetland impacts in the Great Bog area. In the last couple of weeks, I will be honest, because I do also think it's on the next slide, DES and Eversource have both agreed that the new pole replacements that we're proposing, so the ones right down the middle of the right-of-way and the distribution instead of the transmission, that when they're in wetlands, that's a permanent pole, that's a permanent wetland impact. That has changed in the last 2 weeks, so the CUP currently only has temporary wetland impacts. So we are proposing on the next slide, I believe it is 725 square feet of permanent wetland impact. We can work with the planning board or you to revise the application in front of you as well. But I wanted to give you the heads up of in the standard dredge and fill, we will have 725 square feet of permanent impact. And that's related to each pole. Each pole we're assuming is a 25-foot impact for the caisson and the gravel around it. So it's just a 5 by 5. In the standard dredge and fill, you'll see this table as well. It goes over, or in the CUP as well, goes over the upland impact as well as the temporary impact. I think if the next slide goes into avoidance and minimization. A large part of the standard dredge and fill is our avoidance and minimization measures. We've walked this area many times and have shifted these work areas based on archaeology, based on wetlands, and existing access. We have a table in here that goes over it. The majority of the impacts for the Great Bog and the wetland that is in between exit 3 and a railroad, that has an equal consistency, equal width across the right-of-way. So there's no narrow point to go through. So as far as our avoidance and minimization measures, they are taking it from a 2-pole right-of-way basically down to a 1. But we still do need to access that for 44 structures in those wetlands. If you can go to the next one, I believe. This is just best management practices. I think you have all seen this before. We're proposing temporary wetland impacts with timber matting. That timber matting is like 4 foot by 16 foot. It spreads out the ground pressure for our equipment. We are proposing to be in here for 1 growing season. So 1 growing season is from May to September. Per DES regulations and talking with them, that is a temporary impact per the rules. So we will be in here for 1 growing season. Here's just a picture of typical restoration after the matting is removed. While I'm on schedule, this standard dredge and fill permit has a very long lead time through all the reviews. We're also open to public hearing at the end of this, and that adds another 45 days to the application. We will be, like I said, submitting this in the next 2 weeks. That pushes this submittal, worst case scenario, to an approval by like October 16th. So we will be starting work in fall 2024 and then going throughout the season. We also have Fish and Game and Natural Heritage Bureau best management practices. Fish and Game actually just got back to us as I was sitting back there. We didn't identify any turtle overwintering habitat when we did delineation for this line. So we are training all of the contractors to be trained individuals, and it's their responsibility to sweep the matting for any turtles or snakes. That is a requirement of the state that is pretty much standard across Eversource at this point. NHB, Natural Heritage Bureau, we actually coordinated with them last year and did a rare plant survey for 2 species in the Great Bog. We had to re-coordinate this year because it did expire. 2 new plants actually did pop up as being observed, so we'll be going back out there for 2 additional plants in May and June. I believe the next slide is the FVAs, so we also did a function value assessment. Excuse me for saying Belmont on top. You can tell I was at Belmont last night. We have the function value assessment. That is also included in your conditional use permit. We did go through and rate them from principles to having different characteristics. The next one, I believe, is our fish and game coordination. Additionally, for construction best management practices, we're now using any plastic welding material. Silt fence and silt sock are primarily used. We have a compliance inspector going out there weekly to make sure that everything is abiding by all of the permit regulations. Additionally, as far as local permits, we have a Greenland conditional use permit. We have the standard dredge and fill, so we have the Natural Heritage Bureau conditions, the Fish and Game conditions. We also have an upland disturbance permit, an alteration of terrain permit that will have conditions, as well as a EPA construction general permit on the list of permits that we have for this project. I think if we go into the next one, it's just typical restoration, so our alteration of terrain. We will be proposing a 16-foot gravel road in wetland, or not wetlands, gosh, in uplands, as well as a 100-foot by 100-foot work area for these pole replacements. That work will be restored to a 30 by 60 area in uplands. That's in case of emergency. If we need to get to that line, there's a safe level surface for the trucks. As you can see, we're kind of just strawing over everything, as well as seeding. Grass seed mix is generally used just because it's a fast germination to really get stability up quickly. I think the next couple of pictures are just the photos of the right-of-way in general. So this is the southern portion that's next to 95. A couple of these photos are actually taken right off 95. And then if you get off exit 3, it goes right over railroad trestle. So you see that railway just in the bottom right. And then the next slide is, the top left is still next to 95 exit 3 area, and then the other 3 are the Schiller substation areas. So there's a lot of infrastructure over at the Schiller area, as I'm sure you saw. I think there's like 7 transmission lines that go through there right now. So just wanted to familiarize with the site there. This project has no proposed tree clearing. We're not widening any right-of-ways. Everything will be according to the Best Management Practice Manual in 2019. I went over schedule, so I think that kind of wraps it up. I think I have one more just ending slide of a standard dredge and fill application. I've been going to a lot of towns and municipalities about a standard dredge and fill that haven't been quite versed as well as you have. I can go through what you'll see when we do give you the standard dredge and fill permit application, but I think you guys have seen a couple of them before, so I don't need to go through it. It'll be fairly thick. It'll be, I think it's like 200-something pages. So I'm mentally preparing you for that application. But this is where I can open it up if you have any questions. Myself, or I think Kurt, if he's still here, can attempt to answer.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the commissioners?
I have one question. You spoke about reseeding after the mulching or with. What type of seeds are used? Is it a specific local mix? Is it a generic grass?
We
Or-
generally, in upland areas, we just do generic, just grass mix. We don't tend to seed wetland areas because when we're putting down mats, it's usually on some type of vegetation that we can pop back up and it's not frozen under. So we don't need to mulch that. So in upland areas, it's usually just a grass mix. If we do need to seed wetland areas, it is a specific wetland seed mix from, I forget who the company is out of Western Massachusetts, but it's well utilized and we use that for wetlands.
Thank you.
I can get you, if you would like, the seed mix, but it'll just be typical grass species.
Okay, thank you.
Connor, this is Kurt. I just want a sound check. Can people hear me?
Yes.
The entire world can hear you, Carrot. You're pretty loud.
Awesome. Thank you. I wasn't sure if I could be heard. Everything's going swimmingly so far. Just wanted to make sure that I could be heard when I do chime in. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
I'm sorry I wasn't able to make the site walk. I'm just curious about nesting, and have you seen any nests that are active or will be considered or factored into this project?
Yeah, nest referred to, so what we focus on a lot is like turtle nests, but are you referring to birding
Yes.
nesting? Yep.
Yeah.
It's funny, Greenland actually was very keen on our birding as well.
I just know like some of the bigger birds tend to use poles and things for osprey and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's
so.
actually an osprey nest right off exit 3 that I think we reinstalled over there. We're working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We do have a migratory bird section in the standard dredge and fill. We believe that based on the timeline that we won't be impacting any of those. Majority of the work is in a marsh with Phragmites. There's not too much nesting because we're so close to 95. We're not like in the middle of it. So we haven't seen any yet from we've been out there 4 different times. But we'll be definitely reviewing that throughout the review process.
Okay. Yeah, Barbara.
So when you were talking about, when you say upland, you mean upland, and then there's the wetland, and then there's the buffer.
There's the transition period, yeah.
Yeah, so I know that you said there would be a seed mix of grass for the upland. Is that, I mean, my question has to do a little bit with, are you typically doing work in buffers and wetlands through a whole growing season? Because a lot of times it seems to be in the winter.
Ideally, all of this, it's hard to say, but ideally all of this will be done before next winter. So it won't be for the entire growing season. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No. So ideally, this would be from May to just September.
This would be from when we get the permit in October through the winter.
Okay.
And then I think if Kurt knows better, I think it's like 6 to 8 months. But I don't want to stand by that because I haven't seen I don't know if contractors have been awarded a project yet, so.
Okay.
Right, yeah, the permitting process has really been quite lengthy. So I know that the contractor will be looking to, I'm sure, execute this as quick as possible. I think probably a 6-month time frame is probably accurate.
So then, yeah, if we get it, worst case scenario in October, it'll be whatever that quick math is.
Okay.
March, April.
So I kind of interpret that as in, it's not going to matter too much with replacing, because when you put the mats down, it seems like everything underneath is covered for a while, but if it's covered during the non-growing season, we don't have to be too concerned about what you put for seed mix and things like that.
Correct. Yeah, that would
Correct.
That would be the ideal situation, that we're out of there by beginning of the growing season. But we will be seeding those upland areas. I know you were speaking of the buffer areas. That is considered in
Upland.
jurisdictional as upland. So that will be having grass seed mix as well. If we can discuss that, however you like.
Yeah, it's mostly it's going to be a lot of invasives you're going to be dealing with anyway that are there. So.
Yeah, we also have a section on that. There's a lot of invasives in these wetlands. Really, next to 95 and exit 3, it's just all Phragmites. 12 foot tall, you can get lost in them. But we will do everything in our power to stop invasives from coming in. I mean, we're using clean timber matting. Hopefully we'll be out. We're using only straw on Eversource project, so we're not allowed to use hay. So it has no seeds, but
Okay, thank you.
Continuing on like the plant theme, I'm curious about the rare plants that you saw in the
Yeah.
Great Bay.
there's a few.
Yeah.
So in the Great Bog, I mean, I know I have surveyed it, so I think it's fairly known, so I don't mind releasing this. But we surveyed for hairy fruited sedge and then tufted yellow loosestrife. We did not find any of that in our work area. So we only surveyed the right-of-way. That's not saying that it's not in the bog itself, deeper in. Additionally, it seems that NHB updated their database like this winter or something because we submitted a new one and then got 2 new plant hits from, I think, 2009. So we'll be surveying for Great Burr Reed as well as American Reed in the Great Bog Wetland as well.
But you didn't see those. Those are just records in the database. Got it.
Those are records, but we're required to go out there.
And look.
Yeah, and look for them. The thing with Great Burr Reed is that without the fruiting body, it looks extremely similar to common burr reed. So we'll go out there in May and just look for burr reed in general. And then if we do find it, we'll have to revisit the site in August and see if it's common or great. So it will be a couple surveys if we do find something. Hope that helped.
Yeah. Interesting.
And this is just to clarify, because we have this chart that indicates what the temporary wetland impacts are.
Yes.
For the upland impacts too. So are there any permanent, did you say? I know there's the little area where you're going to be doing the gravel road and.
Yep, so that temporary wetland impact, I will revise this permit. It'll
For the
be
725, Yeah.
just taken out of the temporary wetland impact number.
And there's no permanent upland buffer impacts other than that other?
We
okay.
are proposing upland buffer impact. I want to be clear on that one. So the gravel road will be in the wetland buffer for that gravel road covered by AOT.
And it would be back narrowed though, down? No.
It will still be, if it's just the road will still be 16 feet.
Okay.
So I want to be clear on that one.
And that's permanent. That's in case you need to
Correct.
access in the
Yeah.
future. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I will, if I may, I will jump in and say that those areas will revegetate, even though that they are gravel, during the construction process. Those areas will revegetate with native vegetation.
Thank you. Any other questions? Someone like to make a motion?
Look like Jesse.
Sure. I will make a motion to recommend approval for the conditional use permit application for Eversource Energy for the Resistance Substation Retirement Project.
I'll second, and maybe, if it's okay, one condition, even though he stated it in his presentation, that they do the, before they go to the planning board, they add the information about the 725 permanent square feet of permanent impact, wetland impact, just to clarify, if that's okay.
That's fine.
I'll second.
Any discussion? I'm good with it. Okay, ready for a vote? All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will be dropping off 4 hard copies of the standard dredge and fill. So if you have any questions, our contact information is on there.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next on, so are you leaving now?
Yeah, if they're not here now, right?
Because we still have the 50 Odeon, but you're recusing yourself for that anyway.
So,
Right, so then do we have to, if they do show up after 50 Odeon, do we have to make a motion now to say who's gonna?
no, I think you can do it after I'm gone.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Right. But somebody has to vote, right? Alternate?
Yeah.
Now that I go.
Yes, yes, that is correct, someone has to vote. So, Brian, you're still an alternate, right? Yeah, okay. Brian, why don't you be the voting member on this next application? Sure. So next on the agenda is the wetland conditional use permit application for 50 Odeon Point Road. Is there someone here to speak to that? Yes. Thanks, Barbara. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Oliver. I'm from Norman Doe Associates. I'm here representing the property owner, Mr. Jack Gardner, on a restoration plan and wetland conditional use permit application for the 50 Odeon Point Road property. So the 50 Odeone Point Road property, it received a wetland violation notice back in the summer of 2022. We were contacted by the property owner to assist him in the process of delineating the property for natural resources and coming up with a plan for addressing that notice of violation from the city. The notice of violation was associated with the rebuilding of a stone wall that is at the very back of the property, as well as clearing of vegetation associated with that, and also extension of an existing swale that was on the property. So for a quick summary of the property, I know we all were out there for the site visit, but there were 3 main natural resources that were delineated. There is a wetland, which is called POGW2, which extends from 2 culverts that are located coming out of a head wall. And these 2 culverts have streams, PGS1 and POGS2. One of these culverts is directly linked into the stormwater drain system for part of the development. The other one connects to a culvert that's linked with a depressional area on the other side of the road. We don't know wetlands-wise what's over on that other side because it's a separate property. Also, at the very bottom end of the property is salt marsh that is bordering Sagamore Creek. We called it POGW1, and we delineated both the line for that wetland, and the line for that wetland is also the highest observable tide line for the property. And wetlands, POGW2 and POGW1, they actually do merge at a certain point, just about here at the bottom of the POGW2. There is a stone swale that was installed by the property owner partway down, and I'm not sure why this is not holding on. There was a stone swale that was installed. For the purposes of the discussion of this application, we divide it up into an upper swale and a lower swale. The upper swale was installed between 2010 and 2017, according to the property owner's records, and the lower swale was installed in 2022, at the same time that the stone wall was rebuilt. So here you just have representative photos of the wetland for POGW1, representative photo of POGW2 showing the streamlines that are within it. That's a portion of that wetland that actually exists on the abutter's property. And then you have an overview of another section of POGW2. Now you'll notice that that bottom photo of POGW2, it has a bare area and a tree stump in it. That is because this part of the wetland was actually eroding prior to when the property owner put the swale in. And the vegetation cover has been coming back, but that area quite hasn't recovered yet, or not, at least not as of this picture. Click forward. So you'll notice that this is a view, POGW2, and the stream that's being transferred through it. As you might see, the lines are showing where it's coming along the side of the house. So that's basically it coming up along the side of the house. And then the lower picture is right where it starts to curve and turn into swale. And there is actually plastic liner that the property owner has put in that helps keep water flowing away from that previously eroded area and into the swale that he established. Next. So these are just overview pictures of the 2 halves of the swale. The first 2 pictures are of the upper swale standing at the top and looking down, and then looking partway from midway point in the upper swale and looking upslope. And then that final picture at the bottom shows the full extent of the newest section of swale, and the red arrow indicates the line between where you have new and old swale. Next, please. In addition to extending this swale and rebuilding a stone wall, there was concerns about erosion, and so the contractor doing the work suggested that he could maybe spread some gravel over the bottom near that swale to try and increase surface friction. And so there's 444 square feet of gravel that was just spread across the substrate of this wetland. So that is the first picture. The second picture is showing an overview of the area directly upslope of and also the rebuilt stone wall. So the wall was rebuilt from a low, loose pile design to being a perfectly squared off design that has the dimensions that are provided in the application. And that resulted in significant loss of vegetation coverage in the area upslope. You can see in the very bottom picture, it's kind of hard to tell, but you do have the same exact picture in your applications. Where the orange flags are in the lawn, that indicates the full extent of impact and vegetation loss on the property as a result of the previous work. Next slide. So these are just overviews of the property. So the topmost is showing a complete overview of wetland 2, essentially, viewed from the deck, contains the entire length of the swale. And then the second photo is showing the overview of the still remaining existing lawn and the impacted area directly upslope of the wall, and then the marsh beyond it. And I would like to also note that because of where the line is for wetland 2, the buffer, the vegetated buffer for wetland 2, technically extends into much of this lawn area. I believe you guys saw it as marked out blue flags during the site walk. And as part of this conditional use permit, we are asking for a variance from the requirement in the ordinance that the property owner cease mowing this lawn. Obviously, any areas that get touched as part of the restoration and need to be restored and have their vegetation improved and turned back to a native status, those areas will be protected, and the plan is to put signage to indicate that there should be no clearing, no cutting, no mowing in those areas. And if there's any like cutting of shrubs, the shrubs should not be cut any lower than 3 feet. We do ask that this allowance be made for the value of the property and for the property owner to be able to maintain sight lines to the beautiful bay, which is part of the value of the property. Next slide, please. And these are just pictures of the access route, which obviously they needed to get down to the bottom of this property somehow. They access the property from the paved driveway, which then goes down. Some of it nicks onto his abutting neighbor's property, as well as a portion of the stone wall that was rebuilt is on an abutting neighbor's property. He did this previous work with the abutting neighbor's approval, and he has his approval to put it all back and restore it. So that's also in the application file that you should have received. Next slide, please. So what we've noticed in subsequent visits to the property, all of those photos that you saw were from August 2022 when I did the original assessment of this property. We did the natural delineation in November, but we've gone back subsequently throughout the process of developing this restoration plan in collaboration with NHDES and members of the city staff. And what we've noticed during subsequent visits on the property is that after the initial natural restoration delineation, we've noticed herbaceous vegetation cover has returned to the previously eroded areas in the wetland and also areas disturbed by activities on the property. However, there's also been observations of progressive channel incision of POGS1, which I definitely noticed after our most recent bout of heavy storms that we had. And we've also noticed that a secondary channel has started to develop off the curvature leading to the swale as a result of the property owner stopping maintenance of that curvature. He's no longer making sure that plastic liner is in place and reinforcing that at all. So you can see here, this is the upper part of the swale that has become revegetated. And then if you could flick to the next slide. This is the secondary channel that has started to form. It's not very prominent in those upper swale portions. Now, current day, it's starting to look a lot more prominent, but it was starting to become prominent as of August of this year when we had the land surveyor out there. And this is pictures of the 444 square foot area where the gravel is placed. So evidently the gravel did not have the desired effect, obviously. Next slide. So these are pictures of what the property looks like when we have a significant storm event. So the photo that's on the bottom left-hand corner, that is from December 23rd, 2022. These are photos that were just collected by the property owner. And I believe that that photo was collected during a 1.5 inch rain event, which also coincided with a high tide event. So a lot of water. And then the two photos that are most recent from January 14th, this is the storm event that I believe one of the committee members mentioned during the site visit. That was a 2.5 inch rain event that he took the photo during. And there was an earlier rain event, like maybe a couple days before. So we had maximum saturation and very low vegetation coverage to absorb a lot of it. So you can see that there's a lot of water that comes down through this property, and you can actually see that secondary channel right here. So based upon these observations, it's clear that stormwater management from those roadside head culverts is a key issue and requires some form of permanent control on the property. However, the swale can constitute impacts that NHDS and the City of Portsmouth's zoning ordinance have indicated are just not feasible to permit after the fact because it is fill in a wetland. Thus, we have developed a restoration plan. It's been presented to NHDS and to members of the city's Planning and Sustainability Department. Reviewed by NHDS, it was deemed acceptable as presented. They have not yet issued the restoration order because they are waiting to hear what the city's comments, your comments are. So now we are seeking a conditional use permit from the city to complete the work that we're proposing. So if you wouldn't mind switching over to the plan set that I sent, please.
I had one question about those.
Yes.
The two photos on
I
the
was
right
going to say,
there.
before we leave the PowerPoint, I
That's
suppose
okay.
we could.
Is that coinciding with a high tide? Like I see a lot of water back behind.
It might be. I think it actually did coincide with a high tide in that case.
Or if it was just all being blocked by the.
I think there was also just like the sheer amount of water that comes down across this property is a lot. And that's been part of the reason why I believe the property owner thought it was necessary to put in a stone-lined swale because it's tough to do much else. However, because it's a wetland, yes, that's being modified by a human-installed culvert, but it is still a wetland. So it puts us in a tough spot. Any other questions for that section? Nope. Okay. So skimming through there. So next slide, please. So we have several proposed restoration areas. That first area that we're referring to as Restoration Area 1, that constitutes as this area here where you can see all the little chickenpox dots. Those are shrubs. So what we are proposing for that area is we're going to remove 50 square feet of surface gravel that was spread between the gap in the two sections of stone wall. We're going to restore the stone wall to a lower height of a 1/2 foot to 1.5 feet at most, and a loose pile configuration as shown in the specifications later in the plans. The determination of what is new versus old stone, the best recommendation, because we don't have really comprehensive documentation of what that stone wall looked like before, the best solution that could be determined with NHDS during a site visit in May was we will use a section of undisturbed stone wall, this section of wall, as a template for what should the height and width and appearance of the restored stone wall look like. And also made based upon the judgment of the contractor that's going to be hired or has been hired to do the work, and potentially the original contractor that rebuilt that stone wall, and obviously he brought in the stone so he would know what's new, what's not. And we will install, after completing the stone wall work and any work that requires rolling back and forth across that area, we will install shrubs. It's a 26 spec'd out total, mix of sweet pepper bush, American yew, and maple viburnum. And then we will spread a custom project seed mix of deer tongue, switch panic grass, and path rush in that area. And as a best management practices note, this area, particularly the area directly in front of the wall, because heavy equipment is going to be necessary to remove the stone from the property, the plan is to put in plywood down on the surface to prevent rutting and sort of try and reduce compaction. Equipment was originally used to put in the rebuilt stone wall in that swale, so we might have to juggle the timing a little bit as to when equipment accesses the property, because obviously if we were to do it during wet conditions, that would not be ideal. Restoration Area 2, that constitutes the lower swale and also that 444 square foot gravel area that we have. We're going to remove the surface gravel, completely remove the 300 square feet of lower swale, which involves removing stone, liner, as well as reducing and or completely grading out the remnant channel that is there. And we propose to install live stakes and tubelings, a mix of pussy willow and silky dogwood, in this remnant footprint of the channel, which will be covered with an erosion control blanket. And additionally, sweet pepper bushes, a total of 6, will be placed in the area adjacent here. And then we will apply the custom project seed mix over that area. Restoration Area 3 constitutes that upper swale area, which is 476 square feet. All the stone will come out, all the liner will come out, as well as the plastic landscaping liner. It really just doesn't hold up. It pops out most of the time and constantly needs to be reset. A small amount of the stone that's pulled out of that upper swale will be retained, and it will be used to sort of build a more reinforced edging to sort of try and keep majority of flows conveying down the flow path that we're establishing for this vegetated swale. We've seen that based upon the evidence of what's starting to happen now, we're starting to get an erosive channel coming down through here. We really just want to try and direct that water to where we're putting in our effort in terms of stabilizing vegetation. That doesn't mean that there will never be water coming out of this swale. It is bound to overtop during significant storm events like the one that we had on the 14th, but it will certainly help. We are planning on putting also in 12 shrub species, again, mix of pussy willow and silky dogwood. And the upper swale will be fully planted similar to the lower swale with live stakes and or tubelings. We're planning on putting the New England semi-shade grass and forbs mix, sort of spreading it all throughout this wetland area, I mean, it's come back with a good deal of amount of vegetation, but it's only herbaceous. It has limits. It disappears every winter. And that mix has a greater diversity of plants in it than are currently observed in that area that are more likely to leave above ground materials. And then restoration area 4 constitutes the access road. So existing currently, we have this access road that weaves through the trees down through the property. There is an existing patch of New York fern in this area. We're looking to expand upon it and reestablish a denser amount of it. And also we're planning on applying the New England erosion control restoration mix for dry sites to the entire access routes to fill in the gaps and try and anchor down that soil a little bit. It's a very bare area right now. So the plan is to implement all of this work this spring. Ideally, we would like to utilize live stakes. The window for live stakes ends at the end of the shrub senescence period, which is typically end of March, early April. So being able to implement this plan using live stakes really depends on getting swift approval and then proceeding to the planning board as soon as possible so that we can get approval from them and speak to our plant suppliers and they can get us the plants. Like, they are available, they're willing to be flexible with us and delay some of their deadlines for getting us materials, but there's a limit to how long they can hold these things for us. I think, post-construction and work. So work and installation of plantings will be conducted under the observation of a qualified construction monitor from Normando Associates who has wetland experience. They will ensure that the work is completed according to the specifications in the plan, and they will be on site to make on-site decisions regarding fine details of the plan. The property will be monitored for a period of up to 5 years post-construction from final planting. Initial post-construction monitoring will involve site visits by Normando staff at a minimum of every 77 calendar days, and site visits during or within 24 hours of a quarter-inch or more storm event. This will continue until we have 75% vegetation coverage observed in restoration areas 1 and 2 in terms of herbaceous vegetation coverage. So i.e. that seed mix that we put down, once we have 75% coverage of this from the seed mix and everything else on site is looking okay, no signs of erosion, no evidence that we need to continue to tweak anything, that is when we will tick over into the one annual visit, during which we will enact the annual visit protocols, which involves providing reports to you lovely people. So the performance standards for this project are have at least 75% aerial coverage by planted and native volunteer species by the end of the second growing season and then through to the end of the monitoring period. Have at least 80% survival of the planted container shrubs by the end of year 1. If we don't have survival, we'll obviously replace. Have sufficiently successful establishment of the live stakes or tubulings in the swale by the end of year 1 to avoid development of large gaps in woody vegetation coverage in the swale. So that's saying basically it's going to be a judgment call of the person doing the monitoring in conjunction with discussions with you about, does this constitute a significantly large gap or do we need to fill this in? Have stable substrate with no erosion problems. That is a key concern for the property owner and I think for everybody involved. And control any invasive plant species if present for the duration of the monitoring period within the restoration areas. There is invasive Phragmites in the salt marsh, but we're not touching the salt marsh. And the aim is to not have the Phragmites from the salt marsh end up in our restoration area. And I think with that, that is the end of my presentation. Questions?
Thank you. That was very comprehensive. You didn't speak to the part that is hopefully going to be grass.
Which part?
That's my point. I don't know where it is specifically.
So
the
where it
area
is,
that has
so
been asked to not
this
be mowed.
pink, so this pink line here,
Mm-hmm.
this represents the 25-foot vegetated buffer for all of the wetlands that are on the property. The concern is that this is existing lawn that has not been disturbed either by the swale activities or the stone wall activities, and the intent is to avoid impacting it as part of this project. So it will still be lawn. The property owner is maintaining it as mowed lawn currently, and he would like to be able to keep it that way. We are proposing to place signage on low-place placards along the edge of, in this case, the wetland edge here, and along the upper edge of the restoration area for Restoration Area 1 as an indication that it should not be mowed or cut beyond that point.
Can you just repeat that? Because I was looking at my map and not looking at your map. So where are you proposing to put the placards?
So the
to
placards
avoid
are
mowing?
these little squares, the red squares. So I think I've got like 4 that are visible, but basically they run along the edge of the wetland here, and then we have one there to sort of indicate the corner of the restoration area there. So those are the main restoration areas, and those are the areas that I think we would be most concerned about accidentally a landscaper or a future property owner not realizing that you can't cut in there, you can't go in and rip out all that lovely vegetation that we've just put in. So you want to have signage there to give them a heads up about that. I'm not too concerned about somebody going in and taking out the New York ferns because there's really nothing else over there. There's no reason why they would clear it over there. And it also is outside of the 25-foot vegetation buffer, so I'm not too worried about it. And then the erosion control mix, which is going to go up to the driveway, that stuff's pretty hardy. If you mow it, it'll come back. And it's, again, not within the 25-foot vegetation buffer. Did that answer your question, Stuart?
Thank you. Yes.
Do you have a plan or like something written out to give to the future landscaper for this property? Or whoever the current landscaper is, so that they know, aside from the signage in the field, like, you know?
Aside from the signage in the field, we have not developed a plan for any future landscaper or mowing company. That struck me as something that you could either present this and explain it to them, or it would be the purview of the property owner to communicate that.
My other question is, you said annual monitoring visits up to 5 years.
Up to 5
So
years.
does that mean, like, what would shorten that monitoring period?
I feel like that would be a decision that would be reached by NHDS and the city. I mean, if we get to year 3 or 4 and everything is looking great on this property, everything is stable, the live stakes have all come in very well, it's not unusual for those 5-year monitoring periods to be shortened by a year or 2. It's also not unusual, even if things are going well, for them to be extended. So it's kind of one of those things where we're required to propose it as 5, but it is under the purview of the city and NHGS to decide whether they think it's necessary to continue or not.
So would it be fair if we instead change it to like a minimum of a certain amount of years? So we said like a minimum of 3 years, and then it was kind of decided upon it whether it was longer, or is that?
Since they're suggesting a standard of 75% survival, once, I would say, if that has been reached, then you have the option to shorten the monitoring.
But it sounds like once that's reached, that's when the annual visits then
So
start.
once 75% aerial coverage of the herbaceous cover, say in restorations areas 1 and 2 are reached,
Yeah.
that's when you would sort of tick over into the annual visits. My hope is that if we install this in early spring, by the end of the growing season, we'll be done with annual visits. Hopefully, well before the end of the growing season, we'll be done with we'll be done with weekly visits. I'm
Weekly
sorry.
visits. Okay, and
Sorry.
then annual visits.
And then annual visits start with, again, assuming that we get everything in the timeline that we're hoping for. The first annual visit would technically be, the place mark would be like this end of this growing season, basically.
I think one of the reasons why clarifying that annual monitoring period length is maybe important is just because it's, if average maybe is 5 years, but sometimes it could be extended and sometimes it shortens, is if this property passes on to another owner and that monitoring in theory should still be going on, how do we make sure that still carries on if there is, if the property does change hands? And, you know, considering maybe putting that into an agreement, into a deed, but what should that number be, I guess, in terms of that? Indeed, to make sure that it's appropriately still monitored for the amount of time that it should, even if the property changes hands.
Yes.
That's kind of what I'm getting at in terms of trying to figure out the length of annual visits.
Well, that's the thing, is like, I don't know what NHDES will say.
Right.
And I suppose it could be a case of they have a separate opinion from the city. I don't know if you agree with that or not. They may simply say, to play it safe, keep it at 5 years. But as I said, I've been on projects where it's like, oh, this is looking fine, you don't need to go back out, has been said. So I was leaving it open to that.
Okay, so maybe putting something in that says, you know, like you said, the up to 5 years, but have something in there that.
I mean, I would say, it seems like the standard condition for the city is you need to watch this for a minimum of 2 growing seasons. I think that that's fair. We'll know within 2 growing seasons whether or not those live stakes are going to be successful.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have any other questions?
I have one other question. I'm curious if there's anything that's being done kind of upstream of this location to try to reduce flows, right? Like, does that seem like a logical thing to be looking at?
Yes.
And like, how big is the area, right, that like drains to this?
So there are, if you zoom out of the plans, I believe that it's visible on the plans. So there are 4 storm drains that are within the vicinity of the house that connect in to what is basically stream 2 and drains onto so that comes out of a head wall on an abutter's property. So you can't really do anything to that person's property. Ideally, something would be done at the source to try and manage it, but that's out of our purview because it's off of the property. And there really isn't that much horizontal space between where you could do very much.
So like roughly how many homes do you think are sending water to this spot?
I do not know. Yes.
If you could come up to the microphone, please.
Soft speaker anyway. The property between Odeon Point Road to Tucker's Cove, I would say about half of that property is mine. The half from the road down to that point is my neighbor next door. Okay, so by the time I got the water, I've got all the volume and I've got all the speed, and it's all downhill. Okay, that's the situation. The situation is also compounded in that property that Mike Danley owns next door, it's channeled. It isn't flowing across them, it's coming down through one big channel, so when it hits, it hits where I am. The original erosion problem before I put the swale in was that when erosion was hitting a flat area and it took out the whole flat area. Okay? That's the reason I copied what the natural swale above me was doing, except I erroneously used stone and other things to do it. But the swale was completely successful, and you saw the pictures of the revegetation and everything that goes in there. Okay, the thing to really understand is how that water comes down so quickly, okay, and goes shooting right through, and you see the volume of water that can come along, and that's the problem I've been trying to solve now with since I moved into there in 2006, was either the water was washing things up or flowing into the backyard. Okay, and those are the problems I was trying to solve. And I'm hoping what's going to happen here is that taking the stone out, putting the vegetation in, okay, and keeping the direction of the swale going down will prevent what we had last time, which was, letting the water go through and it just takes it out again and we're back where we started. So that's kind of where we are.
Can you just state your name and that you're the homeowner so we have that on record?
My name is Jack Gardner, and I'm one of the owners of 50 Odiorn Point Road.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for your work.
So yes, as Jack described, the channelization happens. I mean, if you could go back to the PowerPoint really quick, Kate, I can just show you. So you want to go to like that first page, I think. Yep. So that middle picture, that's on the abutter's property. That's where the two streams merge, and it's already channelized at that point. And then it has the whole rest of the time on their property, on their abutting neighbor's property, and then it runs parallel, very close to the footprint of the house. Sort of hugs this gravel apron that's off the house right before it goes into wetland. And that's where it then meets the area where Jack has forced it to turn to try and avoid this area that was previously eroding. So unfortunately, then, there's not a lot of space to do much upstream.
It just seems like it's kind of like a neighborhood problem. Like you need like a detention basin, or you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
like something upstream of this property.
It is a. I would venture to say it is a man-made problem.
Yeah.
It is a man-made development problem, and it's something that might be remnant of the development was put in at a time where the design that was proposed was approved and it worked fine then, but now we are seeing more storms, larger storms. I don't know whether there's been more development and increase in impervious surface in this neighborhood since that original design was put forth, but it clearly can't really handle it anymore. And unfortunately, it's become the problem of a private property owner.
Yeah. I guess I do have a little bit of concern that this could almost make it worse. I mean, you know what I mean? Like flow could almost go faster now.
Actually,
and like right into that beautiful salt marsh.
Well, that's the thing, is the flow is already going into the salt marsh, and in a way that swale provides a harder surface for it to flow directly over, and there's a liner that's underneath that stone that
right, so it's not,
it can't really fully infiltrate as quickly as it probably should. That's why when we were discussing this with Dave Price from NHDS, he was like, you guys need shrubs, and you need a lot of shrubs, because shrubs love water, which is why we have like 300 live stakes going into this thing, because the idea is to have so much vegetation coverage that it will absorb a lot of the excess water that's there, and also it will provide the friction factor that we're looking for to try and slow it down. There's still going to be flow going down to that salt marsh, contributing to that Phragmites problem, but I don't really see, whereas there's nowhere else for that culvert water to go. So unless we're going to basically say that culvert needs to cease to exist.
Right, yeah. And I think when we did the site visit, you did describe like creating like little break points. I mean, like more like the
Yes.
urban stream kind of restoration thing, right? Where you do like little, like kind of mini breaks for the
So
water.
the idea that I had in discussing with you guys in the field, and this is an amendment that I'm planning on putting in to the plans. You know, I have some erosion controls in there. My thought is that at least for early establishment, we're going to want to put in coir logs at intervals down the length of that swale to try and break up the speed of flow. If we get to use live stakes are typically cut at like 3 feet long, and they get put into the ground 2 feet deep. So there's about a foot sticking out of the ground by the end of it. Talking with New England Wetland Plants, who would be potentially one of the providers for the live stakes, they find that even at high flows, stuff doesn't really dislodge. But if we have to go with tubelings, they're a 5-inch plug, and you're going to have to staple them into the ground basically with landscaping staples, either 1 or 2 that are crossed over, and they have a greater chance of popping out. Now, if we did that, the benefit to going with the tubelings is that they have a root system that's already sort of semi-established, and they would need to go in later in the year simply because it takes time to nurture them to develop that root. So hopefully we would be sort of out of this extreme case of, like, I think the most damage to this property probably happens right about now, this time of year, when there's absolutely no vegetation to slow any of that stuff down. So there are pros and cons to each, but I think once they get established, they'll do a good job. But I agree, it's a fair concern.
Do we want to make a vote to go past 6 PM? Let's get close.
Sure. Would someone like to make a motion, or I guess the question is, do we want to extend past 6 PM to finish off this application? Should we do a vote? All in favor? Extending to 6:30? We'll do another vote at 6:30 if we need to. Okay. All right. Carry on. Any other questions from the commissioners? Are we ready to make a motion on this project?
Maybe just a suggestion about lawn care, because lawn means lawn care, and that often entails pesticides and other treatments. So if that can be avoided and specified, so that doesn't spread, because there will be events where it will be flooded and it will just naturally spread through the ground. So if we can avoid that.
As I say, I'm not familiar with the full regimen of lawn care, but that can certainly be discussed.
Someone want to make a motion?
I will, and please feel free to add stipulations. I will make a motion to recommend approval for 50 Odorn Point Road with the stipulations. I don't know if we should have the owner consider or practice NOFA standards for lawn care. As you mentioned, amend the plan to include coir logs, I believe is what they were called, to slow flow. So that is part of the plan and established. And I feel like I'm forgetting one more, but I'm not sure.
I mean, we had I was talking about the putting it in the deed thing, but I'm realizing I don't feel like that's as necessary as I once thought it was going to be.
Oh, and the other thing is, I don't know if we should, I appreciate wanting to have access to kind of mow that section straight across to the swale, My concern is if we don't address that clearly and people see they can mow within the 25, that will move towards the salt marsh, which I would not want to see. So I don't know if we need some sort of wording around. I mean, I think it looks fairly clear that that will be pretty bushed, and so it'll be clear not to mow in there. But again, you know, knowing that houses sell and people have different understandings of what is appropriate to do or not do, I don't know if we need to address that or not. I would.
Yeah, I mean, I think having, like, we were kind of talking about like a plan for whoever the landscaper is, maybe just showing a map, a much simpler
Yeah,
map for
my
them.
plan was at the end of this work, I mean, because the location of the proposed shrubs and all of that, it's like, that's not the exact point where the shrubs are going to go. Like, for example, some of the shrubs that are along the curvature of the swale, or some of the shrubs that are in that area upslope of the wall, we may dig down, find a tree root, decide we have to move this somewhere. The final location of all those shrubs and the full extent of the restored area will be mapped as an existing conditions as-built plan that comes with that first report that you guys receive. And that seems like the perfect place to just take that plan and turn it into a very simple yard maintenance. Here's your line, no touch beyond that.
Yeah, so I think depicting that area that you're talking about remaining mowable is very specifically called out, and that everything else is to be
Yes,
not messed with.
I agree.
Do you have a second? Second? Okay. Discussion.
I'll just chime in and say, from the city perspective, I know it's been a long time coming since we, first talked to you, Mr. Gardner, out on your property in 2022. But we really appreciate how thoughtful this restoration plan has been. It's very, very robust, and I think the live staking is going to do really well, and we're really excited to see those reports come in.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't been part of this nearly as long as the city staff has, but from the site walk and the plans that we've gotten, it's, yeah, you've done a lot, so appreciated. Anybody, any other comments? Are we ready for a vote? Okay, all in favor? Brian, you're voting on this one? Opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will receive a letter from you guys.
With those stipulations, yep.
And we may proceed to the planning board for that March meeting?
Yes, I believe so.
Huzzah.
Good luck. Good luck with those live stakes. Okay, I guess we should make a motion to postpone to the next meeting, the 224 Broad Street.
I think so.
All right, someone want to make a motion to postpone to the next meeting, the 224 Broad Street application?
I'll make a motion to postpone the application from 224 Broad Street to the next meeting.
Do we have a second? Second, all in favor? Great. Other business, we already welcomed Talia. And Pierce Island Kayak Launch.
Okay, so that was from staff. Just a really quick update. So we just wanted to let people know that in the Planning and Sustainability Department, we're working on a restoration plan. So we had either a staff person or volunteer of the rec department early last spring went out and built some beautiful stairs on Pierce Island, sort of across from the boat ramp where they store kayaks. The stairs kind of lead down the shoreline right there into the water for kayak users to more easily access the water down there. They did that without permission and without knowing that they needed a wetland CUP, and so we have been in contact with DES because that's DES jurisdiction. It won't need a wetland CUP from the city, but they sort of gave us the option of a restoration plan for the stairs and the square footage of impact, or keeping the stairs and applying for a permit. And we have decided, sort of as the city, that we can just encourage kayak users to go and use the boat launch area, which is what it was originally intended for, and also that beach area closer to the ramp. And we'll probably be planning to put up some signage where the stairs are after we take them out, and we're working on a restoration plan to just help stabilize that part of the bank once we fill it back in and put some plantings in. So just wanted to give you an update on that. You might hear about it in the next few months or see something. Yeah. That's it.
Anybody else have any other? Yes, Jess.
We have a date for the Sustainability Fair. So it is Sunday, April 14th from 12 to 3 at the Connie Bean again. Tentatively, we have already had some positive feedback about organizations that are attending. We've expanded our participants this year in that we're inviting businesses to attend as well, although it would be clear it's not really an opportunity to sell things, it's just more an opportunity to share about who you are and what you're doing and those kinds of things. Our vision, last year we were really kind of focused on getting people to take action on Earth Day. This year our goal is that it's a lot more interactive and engaging with attendees, and that they leave with take-homes that they can implement into their lifestyles to be more sustainable, sort of everyday stuff, whether it's little simple things or bigger, broader, like they want to put solar panels on their house, how do they do that kind of thing. So hopefully Conservation Commission will have a table again. We're still working on, further details. The Max Rader, the city arborist, has signed on that will be the day that he gives away the free trees this year to all the Portsmouth residents. So that'll be happening in conjunction with the Sustainability Fair this year. So, and more news to follow as I have more details.
Awesome. As you're mentioning April, I'm just realizing do we need to think about what we want to do for Earth Day, if anything, as a Conservation Commission like we did last year? But we don't need to talk about that today, but soon, 'cause it's coming up. Great.
I have a logistical question for Kate or Peter. Somebody sort of half mentioned it. Can we vote on applications if nobody's here to speak to them, or if we feel we have enough information, or is that not really?
I think
We just
technically we
postpone?
probably could, but it's just.
I mean, I had questions about it, but.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
curious if moving forward.
They don't technically have to present, but I think it's just standard.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got something to say.
I mean, the Broad Street one was an interesting case too, because we did meet with them twice, so
Right.
you could imagine.
I think it's happened in the past that you voted on applications when no one's here, but it's like a state wetland permit or things like that.
Right. It's
But I don't know if it's ever happened with a conditional use permit. So, but it's up to you guys. If you feel like you have enough information and you're ready to make a decision, it's a really simple one, or it's a really slam dunk no, whatever you decide, I suppose you could, but typically you want to hear from the applicant, be able to ask some questions, that kind of thing.
right.
So, yeah. I sent him an email when you postponed them, and then I just sent him an email saying you're about to adjourn.
Sorry. Sorry. Next one. Great. Okay. Adjourned.
Woohoo!